And we're live, so sorry you guys, a couple of minutes late, but I'm here today, joined by the lovely Cynthia Murphy. We're here to talk about the Midnight Game, to get to know her a little bit better, and to give you guys a little bit more of insight on her writing and how she comes up with amazing ideas. So if you guys are able to make it to the live today, please leave questions if you have them in the comments. So, quick introduction to my guest today. Cynthia is a YA author from Northwest England, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
and so she's always loved scary things, and she was always reading point horror books in primary school, and then she did the big jump to adult horror with Stephen King in her teenage years. I feel like most of us did the jump with Stephen King.
There wasn't
And
much else there, was there?
no, when I was growing up, that was the first thing I read after middle grade. I just jumped straight to Stephen King. So it's like there was no YA for me back in the day. So I feel like that is why I enjoy it so much now, because I didn't have that growing up. It was missing.
Yeah.
um, so she also loves a lot of classic horror movies from the 90s and the 2000s, which I'm guessing it's early 2000s
Yeah.
mostly. And of course, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which was also something I would watch on TV all the time with my dad. So relatable. And she has been writing some YA horror novels. They all came out in January for some reason, as far as I know. So, Last One to Die, which I have all three books up here, came out in January 2021. Win Like Kill or Die in January 2022. And now we have The Midnight Game that just came out January 2023. So, I don't know. Maybe in the end, you can reveal if there's going to be January 2024.
Oh, maybe.
Maybe. So I just have a quick, like, rapid fire questions just to break the ice before we dive deeper into the book. So, did you ever have a nickname?
A few.
No.
My parents used to call me Cindy, and my auntie used to call me Cinderella.
Oh, that's
Um,
cute.
and then when I was at school, because boys are really mean,
Yeah.
and apparently I wasn't, attractive in the way that they would like. It was a thing in England in the 90s to call somebody a dog if they weren't
Oh,
nice. So
really?
my surname was Power before I got married, so I was called Power Dog. That was my
Oh,
nickname, which those boys.
yeah, I was bullied in school, so like I totally get it. I also got called names, and like bullying was real when I was growing up, in the
Yeah,
80s. So it's like, but I feel like it just makes us stronger, so it's fine.
yeah, it just made me the weirdo that I am. It's absolutely fine.
Same. We're good. So Amy made it. Hello, Amy. So another question: invisibility or super strength? What would you choose?
mm, Invisibility.
Yeah, I feel like I would do that too.
Yeah.
It's something like interesting about being able to watch everybody when they cannot watch you, like when they cannot see you.
Or just the thing like I wouldn't have to worry about what I looked like when I just went to the shop, or if you saw someone that you didn't like when you were walking the dog.
Yeah, yeah, I
It
totally
would have to
understand.
extend to the dog then though as well. She'd have to be invisible. So.
I feel like the only year I didn't care how I looked when I went on the streets was 2020. I just didn't care anymore at some point. I was like,
I
I'm
think there's a
done.
bit of me still there, to be honest.
Yeah, I was like, I'm done. I'm just going to get groceries and back home. I'm not allowed to do anything, so who
Yeah.
cares? All right, so if you could travel back in time, what period would you go to?
It would either be Victorian or Tudor. Um, I think maybe Tudor because it was so different, but also I think it would stink. I think it would be really, really
Yes,
unpleasant. I think it would. I'd come back very grateful for everything I've got. Saying that Victorian times was probably the same.
yeah,
Unless you ended up going to a really nice, fancy somebody's house who was very rich. But I'd like to see the difference.
yeah. I've always been intrigued by also like older times, but then I'm like, things were not so nice back in the day.
No.
Like even things you take for granted now, like going to a dentist, and stuff like that. It's not
Yeah. Oh,
nothing.
God,
It's like,
yeah. I would have died ages ago if it wasn't for modern medicine.
all right, what is your most used emoji?
um, I think the one that goes like, "Ooh, shouldn't have said that."
For me, it's always a thing like the crying, like smiley face or something like that. I
Yeah,
use that
I think that's
probably too much.
yeah.
If you could spend a day in someone else's shoes, whose would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good one. Um, oh, I feel like I want to say like the president of the United States or something, just to like, if there is all this secret information, does he know
Yeah.
anything what's real? Does he know about aliens? I would love to know all that stuff.
Oh
So I
yeah,
do that
yeah.
for
To know all the secrets.
yeah,
Yeah. Do you have any recurring dreams or nightmares?
I do. I've got
Oh.
one where I'm stuck in a lift and the thing snaps and the lift swings and I never fall out of it and it never plummets, but it kind of dangles quite horribly. And in real life, I'm not frightened of lifts. But I always have it through like a changing period in my life. So I don't know if it's a bit
Yeah.
about feeling out of control. But I've had that a lot of times.
Yeah. That is so weird because I used to have a recurring dream in a lift as well. And I
Oh,
haven't
really?
had it in a long time. And I
Oh,
always
you're
thought
gonna
it
have it
was
now.
so weird because I used to go into the lift and then it felt like it just spin around and I would never get to any floor. And it was
Right.
so like I was like in agony because I didn't know if I was gonna make it out of the lift, and it was
It's
really
horrible.
weird. And
Yeah.
it was like a dream that would come from time to time, and I haven't had it in a long time now, and it just reminded me of it. But it's just so weird, like
Yes.
so specific.
It is. I think it's that being trapped and there's no way out and there's not really anything you can do about it.
Yeah, that's so weird. That just reminded me of that dream that I had.
Sorry.
All right. No, it's good. Hopefully, I won't dream about it though, because it's terrifying. And now we're gonna go and talk about the Midnight Game that I love, and I love that you kept the plot like that. The plot that you can check on Goodreads quite mysterious, and it just
Yeah.
had kind of like the rules in a really brief introduction because then you are allowing us, to kind of want to play the game when we read that, and it's kind of like letting us want to find out what's all about. And I also love that you put a trigger warning page at the very beginning of the book, so that people are warned of what's to come. So,
No.
if you could
Yeah.
briefly describe what the Midnight Game is about for everybody.
So the Midnight Game is based on a kind of creepy pasta ritual game that I discovered on the internet, and it involves a ritual to start off with. You have to call the Midnight Man, and then basically you've just got to avoid him for 3.5 hours so he doesn't do horrible things to you, because he learns all of like your darkest fears. So I wanted to put that into something that was a little bit mixed media. So it's told through the story, but it's also told through kind of internet threads. So I've named it Deadit instead of Reddit. It's that kind of forum where people are talking about strange stuff, and six people meet in a chat room and they do the thing you're not meant to do, and they decide that they're going to meet in real life and they're going to play this game. So they meet up, they summon the Midnight Man, but then they quickly find out that everyone there has a secret and maybe not everybody is there just to play the game.
But it's one of my favorite tropes of all times, which is a group of strangers end up somewhere trapped and they have to figure out how to survive. Like it's an
Yeah,
old one, but I always love it every single time because they're
it's
strangers,
all
so something's gonna happen. They all have probably secrets, so I just love it because it's like a bunch of people that have never really met each other, and it's just so interesting to me. So now let's go to some questions about you and the book. So according to your bio in Goodreads, when you were like 12, 13 years old, your English teacher accused you of plagiarism because I guess you wrote an essay that was way too good. And so you kind of thought, oh, maybe I'm good at this thing called writing. So was that the moment that you decided to be a writer?
It wasn't actually. I grew up in the northwest of England, which is a very working class area, so it was never like an aspirational job to have. It was something that kind of rich people, or I don't know, old people in different countries did it, or books were just made and just like appeared on the shelf in the bookshop. Um, but luckily, I was obviously quite a resilient teenager because I remember it so well. I'd done this bit of homework, and I'd written a short story in the style of a point horror, and I think I'd used the phrase peanut butter and jelly, which was so American and obviously not something that we had, and but I'd used this phrase, and she pulled me up in front of everybody, and she said, "Do you know what plagiarism is?" And I was like, 12, so I went, "No." And she said, "Well, you've obviously copied this out of one of your point horror books." And instead of being upset and crying, I thought, oh, she thinks I've written a point horror book. I was really proud of myself.
Yeah.
But it really stuck with me. And actually, this year I went back to my old school, and that teacher was still there. And she came to talk to me because she also still remembered um, saying it. So I was a bit mortified. I didn't really know what to say. But she said it was just so good that's what I thought.
But now she has read your book, so she knows that you have
Well,
published it.
yeah, all these years later, I'm still
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, that's so great. When did you decide that why horror was what you wanted to write? Did you think horror was like priority, or did you have other things in mind at the beginning?
I did about three different manuscripts that varied from urban fantasy to like middle grade, but they did always have a spooky or a creepy element in them. But just none of them ever worked, and none of them kind of sat right. Like the middle grade I got told was too dark. The urban fantasy had like lots of horror elements in. So it was actually when I was on the verge of giving up before I got published, and I thought, well, I need to write something I would love, and then it's not been a waste of time if it doesn't get picked up. So I thought I'm gonna write a point horror. It was something I kept going back to and thinking, what did I really love when I was younger? And I thought, right, I'll just have a go. And that was the one that worked. And they've kind of kept me, in that horror thriller space, and which is lucky because I love it. I think if I was still writing urban fantasy or middle grade, I would have run out of ideas. But I seem to have a lot of horrible ideas for future books.
Nice. That's what I like to hear. But it's true, I heard many authors in interviews that they say they wanted to try something that was popular or something that they thought would get them picked up, and then it never happened. And then when they just decided to write what they felt was right for them, that's when it happened for them. So it's kind of like at the end of the day, when you write what you really feel, that's your best work. So that's
Yeah.
what you should go for. Yeah. Yeah. So now we're going to focus on The Midnight Game, your latest YA horror novel. I want to know, where did the idea come from? Did you ever play any horror games like that, like the ones in the book when you were younger?
No. Oh, I,
No.
I think that's what I loved so much about it. That I immediately go, no, I'm not doing that. Don't be ridiculous. But the thought of putting other people in that situation and seeing what unfolds is really interesting. Um, oh no, no. I remember the things at school where like um, somebody would, trace something on your back, and then they would pretend to pull a rope, and you would feel like you were falling
No.
backwards. Those weird kind of little games. I remember those, but I would have never done anything completely spooky.
For me, in our little hometown, we had like this kind of legends. Oh, this house is supposed to be haunted, so we would go around it and see if anybody would go in, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
But never like a truly like a game with rules and stuff like that.
No,
Uh, but it might be interesting to try. I don't know.
I'd rather write about it.
Yeah. So for this idea, did you have to dive into the dark web to find out about these games? What was kind of like your research process for the book?
I spent a lot of time on Reddit because there's people who have played the game and will,
Oh.
write about it. And then there's ones that I think are a bit more like a creative writing exercise.
Hmm.
But it was all very, very interesting. No, the dark web. So I used to be a teacher, and one of my first ever teacher training days was about the dark web and like what kids might be able to access and these things on there. And it's always terrified me. And I'm always a bit scared that if I go on it, then that's it. I've unlocked something on my computer that somebody is going to be like monitoring my search history from now on or something. Or I don't know. It just the whole thought of it scares me a bit. I'm a proper scaredy cat for a horror writer. So
No, but I
no,
get
it's
it, you
not
know.
in the world. Yeah, it's just no. It's a bit
Yeah.
too creepy for my. It's like real life creepy, and I don't need
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Like there are certain things that I love to see in horror, but I would never do myself. I just like
Exactly.
to see it happen to other people.
Yeah.
That's basically. So this was the first time that you wrote from multiple POVs. Was it like a big challenge for you? And how did you make sure to keep the characters separate, at least in your head?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was a challenge. It drove me nuts at some point, and I think I had quite a long list with times and points of view, and I had to try and make it. I had to make it flow for me, so the characters switch point of view in order because that was what I felt worked for the story. So then when something might happen to a character and their point of view might drop off, the rest can still carry on, and you're not seeing more of somebody than of anybody else.
Hmm.
And I think that's helpful in terms of the twists and turns towards the end, that you don't spend too much time with one person. um, and I think keeping them separate, I tried to have really distinct personalities for each character before I even started. So when I went and I was writing as that character, I knew exactly, you know, what their kind of outward personality would look like to everybody else. So hopefully I've done enough that they are quite different and not too confusing.
No, I think you did a really good job. So I was just wondering, if you wrote like one character and then you had to take a break before getting into the next one, or if you could write everything in one go. Like, did you needed like a break to be able to get into the next one?
Not necessarily with the characters actually, but with the internet threads. That was really going in
Mm,
because the book is split into three parts, and in part one it goes through a person's point of view and then an internet thread, and then someone else's point of view and then an internet thread. But the internet threads are giving away bits of the story, so I had to write them in
mm,
that order so I knew what was being given away, so I wasn't repeating myself or I wasn't missing anything out. And when I got to the end of part one, I was like, I can't do that again. So, and it jumps back in time anyway. So when I got to part two, I wrote the points of view and I wrote the other internet bits separately because they didn't need to feed into each other in the same way. And
mm.
that was much easier.
Yeah. I really love the all the threads. So they were so like interesting to me. I love it because it felt like a real chat room in a way. So I think it was really well accomplished. So I had a lot of fun with those. All right. So more than that one first, you also for the first time in the Midnight Game did mixed media, which were the chats, all the Reddit conversations from the characters. Is it something you always wanted to do for this book, or when you started writing it, you realized that it was a better idea to integrate that for the game?
So for this book in particular, I knew I wanted the internet threads,
Mm,
the Reddit threads, because I had the idea of people trying to match up the characters with the usernames. And I think now we consume so much social media, and especially teenagers. You're trying to get teenagers to give up a couple of hours to come and spend reading your book rather than scrolling on something. And I thought, well, it kind of makes it easier. We're so used to it. So I always wanted that. The games-you-shouldn't-play.com with all the other games. I just loved them so much. I wanted to kind of get them into the book. So then we ended up with that, and then things like news reports. I was thinking about how we actually share information now. You know,
mm,
I wouldn't ring somebody and say like, "Oh, did you read about this in the newspaper?" I would just send them a link, and then
yeah.
they would read it themselves. So I wanted that to be kind of authentic. So when they're talking about, go and read this news article, They're not saying, "Oh, I've just read this and this is what happened." They've just put the link in, and then I actually wrote the news article to kind of explain, what it was. So I was trying to make it quite an authentic way of getting information.
Yeah. I really like that idea, and the fact that you say, so that people would not go and scroll, and you would keep people's attention, because it's true, attention span I feel through the years is getting lower.
Yeah,
Like
mine
people are
has.
not able to focus. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
so weird. And I felt like, when I was reading The Midnight Game, like I read it in 2 days. I was like so into it, and it was so fast paced, and I was just so excited to see what would happen next. So I feel like, you did a really good job on keeping my attention and hopefully many other readers' attention when it comes to that.
thank you.
So in the story, we get to discover different legends, which I love that there is also other games and other things that come up and not just the Midnight Game. Did you enjoy this type of stories and dares like the Candyman and Bloody Mary? Would you ever dare to say that in front of the mirror?
No, I remember them so well from school, and I think I was quite young when Candyman came out. I can't remember what year it was off the top of my head, but I remember being at late primary school, so maybe 10 or 11, and people, saying, um, if you say Candyman 5 times, and I was like, why? Why would we do that? And I could only watch Candyman, I think 2 or 3 years ago. I watched it in lockdown because I was like,
Oh,
oh, I've never seen
really?
this, because I had such memories of being frightened associated with the whole thing. But it's now one of my favourites. But Bloody Mary, I remember, I think that's universal, isn't it? I remember,
Yeah.
I never did it, but I remember discussing it and talking about it at sleepovers and in the playground. And you just hear the little urban legends that go with it. Um, so yeah, wouldn't do it. Love hearing about them.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. It's like, I'm sorry, but I've watched too much horror. I'm not doing it. I'm
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
risking it.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure it's not gonna happen, but just in case, I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite parts of the game was actually the list of rules. Maybe because I'm a Virgo and I just love things that are organized. I just love rules and set of things. Like set of rules. And it kind of reminded me to the rules to survive a horror movie that Randy comments on Scream. And I felt like it was another way of involving the reader in the game because we know the rules, so we know if the characters are following the rules or not. So we know when they are in danger because oh my god, this happened, so that's against the rules. So is the game and the rules completely made up, or is there a part of truth in these rules? Is it something that you found out that people actually do?
Yeah, so these have all come from different versions of the Midnight Game that I found on the internet. So the rules vary, and there'll be some that are the same in all of them, and then some will differ. So when I needed to for the story, I just added some or took some away or
Hmm.
made some up. So it's a little bit of a mishmash. So for an example, they start the game by lighting a red candle, and that isn't something that I found anywhere. You do light a candle, but I wanted red just for the significance of danger, that you shouldn't be, doing it.
Yeah.
And there's also a bit, so the Midnight Man is supposed to know your greatest fear, but because everyone there had a secret, I also wrote it in that he would know your greatest secret and reveal. And I think people's secrets and fears go hand in hand sometimes. So that kind of fit in quite well together as well. But it let us know about the characters in a way that, again, without them saying, oh, this is my secret, we could kind of find out about it in a different way.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I do feel like, if you are keeping something a secret, it's maybe because you're scared of what other people might say or
Yeah,
think. So it
exactly.
is it is a fear at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Um, it is. I really love that detail because they want you like, what is their secret? What it's written there. What are we gonna find out? Is the Midnight Man gonna go and bring that fear for that person? It's like it's all the tension that was building up that I thought was really cool when it comes to all the secrets. So I love to discuss horror tropes. I personally love them.
yeah,
If they're done right, because they're fun. That's what they are, horror tropes. They've been done over and over again. And I feel like your book has some of those horror tropes, but then it has some that kind of go against the tropes. What is your like general take on those horror tropes? Do you embrace them? Do you like them? And is it hard for you to write them because you feel like because it's something that everybody kind of knows, you're looking for that extra kick to make it land for the reader?
Yeah, I think sometimes I love tropes, and I love spotting them in things. And I think my favourite horror film is Scream, which of course took a
Yeah.
load of tropes and like either really heavily leaned into them or completely turned them on their head. And I love that idea. And I love that idea for somebody who might be 13 or 14 and picking up a horror book for the first time because they're not as aware of those tropes as we are.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I like to lean into them sometimes, but then I do like to, make a joke. There's a bit where they say, I'm going to say the thing that we should never say, which is "let's split up," and then of
Yeah. I
course
was
they
gonna
all
mention that because I noted down. I'm like, they said not split up.
yeah,
I
well they
remember
have
noting
to,
it down.
yeah,
Yeah.
that they didn't really have a choice; they had to do it. But
Yeah.
mentioning it made me laugh when I read it when I
Yeah.
wrote it. And I thought anyone who's familiar with that, immediately you're rolling your eyes, going, "Oh God, well there we go."
Yeah.
It's all going to go horribly wrong now. But
Yeah.
somebody younger might not, that might be their first experience of somebody saying, "let's split up," and them screaming at the thing, going, "No, don't." And the thought that someone might do that to my book is really quite satisfying.
Yeah. I like that. I was like, oh my God, they're not gonna split up. This is new. This is new. What's happening? Yeah, but there were like a couple of comments about horror, kind of a little bit meta, but not really. But I really appreciated them because for me, I don't know if every reader is gonna notice all of those things.
Yeah,
But for me, because I have read and watched so much horror that I was seeing all of those things and I was just enjoying them.
yeah,
Like even Scream is really meta, especially part two. Like, they are going over the tropes and saying, I'll be back. And you're like, bye, see you never,
yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly. There's actually a massive Scream reference in this book, but I think you need to be like quite familiar with the original one. Um, One of the characters is wearing a Halloween costume and she's just wearing a cat flap.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That is my favorite kill in the Scream franchise,
Yeah,
I think.
me too. Because
That's
you
my
just,
favorite.
oh, yeah, it's,
That
I've
was
just
my
rewatched it
favorite.
recently and, oh, it's still so good.
Yeah, that's I think if I would make like a ranking video of my favorite kills from Scream, that would come up to the top because it's always
Yeah,
been one of my favorites.
yeah,
Always. So in order to play the game, I thought it was really smart to remove kind of modern technology. Like it helped to add tension to the scenes because nobody can really call for help or things like that. So no phones
yeah,
allowed and only real candles can be used. So real candles, as we know, when you start walking, it flickers. You have to be careful because the flame might go out. So was it something that you decided early on, or was it when you were already writing the book and you felt like it would be better if you would remove those modern elements?
it's actually referred to in every kind of version I've found of the Midnight Game online.
Ah,
They're two things that you need. You're not allowed modern technology. None of these creepy pasta games really allow you modern technology, um,
so it's one
which I
of the
found
things that
really,
was real from the game that you took.
yeah, it was real, and the candles is real. So, and I did, and I think that's why I loved the idea so much because I was like, I can put them in this closed situation.
Yeah,
Everyone's got to leave their phone, but they all really believe that there is a reason they have to leave their phone behind. They're not just
yeah,
going along with it for it could make things go horribly wrong. Um, and the candle, I think when I saw that, I thought, oh well, that's 3.5 hours seems a long time to be kind of stuck somewhere. But if you're trying to walk around and keep this candle lit,
yeah,
and you're stressing about it and worried, that's going to be a big stressor, and it's going
yeah.
to be quite hard to do, and you're going to move slowly, and so I really liked that, and I think that's one of the things that made me think it would be a good situation to put people in a story.
Yeah, because even if something happens and you're kind of trying to look for cover, you cannot just run for your life
Yeah,
because you're holding the
exactly.
candle. So
Yeah,
it puts you in a really creepy situation, like the atmosphere and the eeriness of the scene, it really keeps the tension alive in that moment because that character cannot do much
yeah.
to defend themselves at the moment from the Midnight Men. So,
And there's one bit where, well, I think I do it a couple of times, but the candle goes out, and I thought,
yeah.
how would this situation be more stressful? And I thought, if someone started counting down how long you had, that would be really stressful. So I
Yeah.
put that in immediately because I was like, that's
Yeah.
gonna, if you're fumbling around with this match, because
Yeah.
that was another thing, you're not allowed a lighter; it has to be a match. But again, that was in the original rules that I found.
Yeah, I love that because it's bringing us back to, those classic horrors where everything is a bit more slow, more tension. Because now, really modern horror movies, you're always looking for flaws and plot holes because why isn't he using his phone? There's so much technology, around us and so many
Yeah,
things you can just like grab immediately. And I feel like it's giving a little bit of older horror movie vibes. And I really love that. Like more atmosphere inside of this place. We're trapped, you only have like one lit candle in your hand and you need to walk slowly and try to survive the night, so it's kind of like giving you that almost gothic atmosphere in a sense.
yeah.
And I really enjoy that aspect of the book as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank
So without spoiling anything, did you know when you started the book how you were going to end it, or did you change your mind maybe?
I did. Um, I was gonna just kill everyone.
Nice.
So more people survived than should have done, and that was because as I was writing it, they just grew on me. Like certain
Hmm.
characters just grow on you. And it was in my second book, Win, Lose, Kill, Die. It was the same. I was going to kill off a character that actually made it to the end and took me by surprise, but I just couldn't get rid of them. Um, so yeah, I did. I knew. I tend to know who the bad guys are going to be, and why, because I think it's you need to know why to then be able to
Hmm.
like write it convincingly. Um, But some of it, I don't know. I'm a loose plotter, so I'll plan my main points. Like I know what my turning points are, but everything else just kind of comes to me as I'm writing it. So there are things that take me by surprise, but they've never really fully changed an outcome. So I always
Hmm.
work towards my end goal that I tend to know. Saying that I'm writing something at the minute, and I know everything that's going to happen apart from who the actual killer is. I've still not decided.
Interesting.
Yeah. No.
Normally, that's one of the first things you kind of decide because you need to leave clues as well along the way. So,
Yeah, I think it's going to be a second draft. Go back and pepper some
yeah.
clues in. I've figured it out myself.
So now, apart from the Midnight Game, I wanted to know if you were interested in writing a middle grade or an adult horror book. Has it crossed your mind?
I would like to do both. I think I'm quite greedy. I think adult is a big undertaking because I think adults that read horror really love horror. Um, so to get it right, I think it would take a lot of work, and I would want to do it justice. I would want an actual genuine horror fan who's the same kind of age as me to pick it up and love it. Um, Whereas middle grade, I'd quite like to do middle grade and have it be like a bit cozier. Maybe not so many murders, maybe more of like a spooky ghost story. Um,
Paranormal.
yeah, like those like sleepover stories that you would get told. The kind of thing that scared you when you were lying in bed when you were little. Um, I'd quite like to do something like that, but I've got no plans at the minute, but maybe in the future.
And what projects are you currently working on that you can talk about? I don't know if you can talk about it or top secret.
Yeah, you can't talk about anything in publishing.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I do have some things coming this year. So Win, Lose, Kill, Die is coming out in the US at the end of this year in December,
Oh,
and that's really exciting. And then they're publishing all my others like in succession after it. Um, I've got something that should be out around September, which is it's got Friday the 13th vibes. So
Nice.
summer camp, but it's in England, the north of England, so it's really rainy. It's quite rubbish, and everyone just wants to go home. So it was quite
Fantastic.
funny to write it, yeah. And then I should have something coming out next January. So I am on a like a yearly, one a
Yes.
year kind of book. So I'm working on that at the minute, and that is loosely based on The Watcher House. I don't know if you saw the Netflix series. So there was a
Yeah,
series called
yeah.
The Watcher. So I thought of it first. Um, so because it's based on a real house. So I remember reading all the news articles in The Guardian and stuff about this like mega house that these people had spent all this money on, and then they before they'd moved in, when they were like going in, I don't know if they were renovating or something, they started getting creepy letters with like, do you know what's in the walls of this house,
Yeah.
and you've brought new blood into this house. And I
Yeah.
remember thinking, oh, that's brilliant. Like that, not that's creepy, that's brilliant, that'll be a really good story. um so it's loosely based on that. It's a girl who moves somewhere new. She starts to get these letters, and then a serial killer who was never caught, kind of 30 years earlier, pops up and starts killing again. And she's stuck in the middle of it all.
Fantastic. I really like that idea as well. People were talking so much about the show. I didn't know it was a real story at the beginning. I was not really
Yeah.
familiar with it.
And I mean, this is a spoiler, like skip ahead 15 seconds, but they never reveal what happened.
Yeah, that's really
And
frustrating as a viewer.
so unsatisfying. I will have a resolution. So,
Perfect.
there we
So
go.
is it gonna be YA horror again?
Yes, yeah. I
Yes.
am firmly YA horror thriller for the foreseeable. Yeah.
Fantastic. I don't know if you're gonna go to London this year, but I'm gonna be there again at Yalg. So it's
Yeah,
gonna
I
be
should
too
go.
early for the new book to be there, I'm
Oh,
guessing.
I don't know. It's due in soon, so I mean, there might be. It won't be out, but whether they have proofs or samples, possibly there might be. Um,
Maybe for the September one.
that's not my decision, unfortunately.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, that sounds exciting. I love Friday the 13th. I think it's such a fun franchise.
It's
And
just I've tried to watch them because I never really saw them all. Um, and I got to the third one and I've had to stop because they're all just the same. But then
yeah.
when I was reading about them, I don't know if they get slightly more interesting after
They get
the first
crazier. They
two.
just get more
Oh,
like
really?
absurd, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, just bonkers. I love the whole
Yeah.
like idea behind it though. I think it was a clever. It would have been really groundbreaking and shocking at the time, I think.
Yeah, I think if you've never seen the first movie, you're not ready for the ending.
Mm,
Like once you
yeah,
know it, you know certain things in horror movies, once you know the reveal, then it doesn't have the same impact. But the first time that you watch it, it's quite impressive.
yeah.
But I feel like the franchise then just started going down a little bit. It's like
Yeah, I think there's like 20 of them. Like there's so many of
I
them.
have a box. I don't know. I think there's like 10 at least. But like,
Yeah,
it's one of those franchises that is being milked and milked and milked for money at some point because it was easy money back in the day. So that's what they did, basically.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm really excited about that. I love like camp horror stories. It's just such a good setting for
There's
setting
just
up
so much
people.
that could go wrong. Like,
yeah.
because again, I used to be a teacher, so I used to take primary age kids on these, like adventure holidays where you'd be ziplining or doing archery and stuff. And I just used to think, like, what
Anything
could
can
go wrong?
happen.
Yeah. So then I thought, well, what could go wrong? So I've written a book about it.
Humans can be the killers. There could be animals. There could be creatures. There could be something
Yeah.
paranormal hunting the
There
place because
might
somebody
be,
maybe
yeah,
died there.
there might be a
Like it's
ghost
so many
involved.
options. yeah. Amazing. All right. Thank you so much for your time today. When I read The Midnight Game this year, it's been one of my favorites because I rarely read a book that I read like in 2 days and I want to keep picking it up during the day when I'm busy. I'm like, no, I need to read the book. So thank you for that because honestly, it's the best as a reader when you grab one of those books that really just captivates you and it's just so much fun apart from all the horror that you gave us. And I felt like it had the perfect balance. It's not too little, it's not too much for YA readers. Because I love it when, a horror, even if it's YA, it's bloody enough. Because
Yeah.
I do like some blood in my horror books, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I think that's why this is the first one that had a disclaimer at the beginning. It is a little
Yeah.
bit more gory than the others. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why it's my favorite.
Yeah.
I just like a little bit more blood. I mean, I understand, it's not for every reader, but
Yeah.
I do watch a lot of slashers and they're just a lot of fun for me. So I like to see some blood being spilled in general in my horror.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
So you guys, this was Cynthia Murphy here again, live for you guys with the Midnight Game. I hope you guys had fun listening to us talking about some horror, talking about her latest novel. And I have left on the description box Cynthia's Twitter in case you want to follow her, to know where she's going to be signing or maybe, her new releases. You can follow up everything there, connect with her there as well. So thank you so much again. And yeah, hopefully we'll keep in touch. And hopefully, the next book in September is going to be another favorite of mine because I really enjoy your books. I'm fangirling over here, so it's time to cut it. But thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you next time, you guys.
Yeah. Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye.